All right. Good evening, everyone. Thank you all for tuning in to tonight's Wisdom Wednesday program. I know it's a surprise to see my face. I'm going to be filling in for our sister Ajua this evening. She's with us, but she's having a little bit of issues with the internet. So I'm going to be supporting my sister. And I ask that you all be patient with us this evening as we move into what I believe is going to be very interesting conversation. So I think we fixed the issue with the chat. So if you all can help me out, let me know if it's working. Yes, it is up and working. So as our dear sister Ajwa always does, she starts off the evening with some shout outs because we love to see where our Wisdom Wednesday family is tuning in from. So I see we have some family in Fairborn, Georgia. We have Rhode Island in the house. We have Lewis, Delaware. Oh, wow. We have Cambridge, UK. All right. KC, Maryland, Brooklyn. Yes. Patterson, New Jersey. DC, of course, DMV always representing San Diego, Hartford, Connecticut. Atlanta, Inglewood, Cali, Cape Town, South Africa. Oh, this is amazing. Texas, Louisiana. I see we have family in the house tonight from all over the country and around the world. So thank you for tuning in tonight. And we're going to go ahead and get started. So I want to begin by introducing tonight's presenter. Her name is Jacquelyn Morgan, and she's going to be teaching us about the African concept of Ubuntu. Ubuntu, excuse me. How many of you all have heard of that? Ubuntu. We're going to learn about what this concept is and how we can practice this concept to create unity. And she's going to talk about colonized thinking, what it is, how it originated, how it impacts us today. And I know there's so much that we're going to be learning tonight about how we can free our minds, how we can unite and work together. So Jackie Morgan is a retired licensed professional counselor. She's worked in various DC government social service agencies, including the Department of Corrections, Addiction Prevention and Recovery Administration, Public Housing, and Child and Family Services for more than 30 years. And through all of this, she's incorporated an Afrocentric way of counseling and teaching. Though Ms. Morgan has a BA from Howard University and a master's of counseling from the University of the District of Columbia, she was really educated via her independent autodidactic study of racism from historical, psychosocial, anthropological, cross-cultural perspective. She's been studying Africology since 1980. And through her studies, Ms. Morgan has developed a 12-step program based on the principles of Ubuntu aimed for Black unifications. So without further ado, please help me welcome our dear sister, Jacquelyn Morgan. All right, so let's unmute. Don't forget to unmute your second device. We got this.
Hi,
Yes, there you go.
how are you, Atlantis and everybody else?
We are well, thank you.
You want me to start now?
Yeah, we are ready. We're ready to learn. So you want to share your screen? So that's from the first device. Yep, hit that green share button. There you go. Perfect. All right, we can see you and we can see your screen.
Okay. I'm Jackie Morgan, as Atlantis said, and I'm the founder and CEO of the 12-step program for racism, and it's called Ubuntu, Steps to Unite. And the purpose of this program is to facilitate our health, our survival, and our progress as a people, which requires restoration of our culture and a livable wage/income for everybody, which is only possible. I shouldn't say which is only possible, which is possible once we have learned again how to unite. Atlantis has already told you much about me. credential-wise, but I'm a native Washingtonian. I was born in Berry Farms, Washington, D.C. And Berry Farms, to most people in Washington, is considered a ghetto. I consider it Little Africa because it really did function like an African village when I was there. At age 40, I read The Miseducation of the Negro and discovered that I was miseducated and that I was miseducating my children, which was a horrible blow to me because I considered myself to be a good parent. That was 1980. And soon after that discovery, I encountered or ran across Francis Welsing's um, racism lectures at the Howard Inn and Atlantis's father, Tony Browder, at the Pyramid Bookstore. They saved my life. That information that I got from the two of them started my autodidactic or my self-study journey of self-discovery. That's when I began to really learn about me. That was when I was 40 years old, after having gotten a master's and thinking that I was educated. I've never used drugs, but around 2000, I started going to NA meetings, Narcotics Anonymous 12-step meetings, and I was just so impressed. I was impressed because I had never seen a group of Black people working harmoniously together without a leader for one purpose and one purpose only, and that was just to get better. I was so impressed that I continued to go to that 12-step meeting, and I began to go to other 12-step meetings, and I saw the same thing. Black people in particular working harmoniously together. And I decided if a 12-step meeting could teach or help us work together harmoniously to overcome drugs or unhealthy eating habits, overspending, then it ought to be able to help us with the way we think about ourselves. So I decided to create a program, a 12-step program for colonized thinking. But I struggled over the years with making it Afrocentric or culturally specific until 2018. I, and that's because 12-step meetings don't allow you to talk about racism. They consider that to be political. So, and what I saw was people blaming everybody for their problem, but the system of racism, white supremacy. They blame their parents, themselves, their peers, but never the system. And I thought that was, as a counselor, well, a counselor is supposed to help a person be able to determine what is the source of their problem, racism or um, a personal character defect. And what I saw was that that wasn't happening. We were blaming everything but the system. But then in 2018, I ran across a Native American 12-step group. It's called Wellbriety. And they talked about racism. They said that really their problem, the source of their drinking came from intergenerational trauma, um, colonization, and all the things that we are inflicted by. So I decided to start a 12-step program for colonized thinking. I want to share also, genetically, I am 9% Indigenous American, 17% European, and 74% Sub-Saharan Africa from the Mende tribe, who in this country settled in the South, and are the Gullah Geechee people. I am also a mother of two, a grandmother of five, a great-grandmother of a 3-year-old and a 9-month-old. Now, I want to say two things before I get started. First, at 77, starting this program, I need all the help I can get to make this happen. People to brainstorm how to make it happen, writing the book, a logo, refining this presentation, and people who have 12-step experience to help groups where they don't have anybody in it who has 12-step experience, which means I had a group of Ubuntu 12-step group, and there was no one in the group who had 12-step experience, and therefore they didn't know how to share, how to identify in, and they need help with that. Number two, because we are really in a critical situation in terms of our health, we need to join some type of healing group. Now, there are groups that meet for all types of reasons. You know, the Trilateral Commission, the Club of Rome, the European Council of Foreign Affairs Relations meet to coerce us to do what they want us to do for them, what's best for them. You have the NSNCC, organizations like SNCC and the NAACP that lead us, but they don't really ask us what we want help with. So I'm really recommending that people join some type of healing, a Black healing space. And there are many of them since the George Floyd incidents. Many of them have cropped up over the internet. And I have a couple here. But I think Ubuntu is different in that it is culturally specific. It is solely for the purpose of us healing, learning to unite, and to monetize our talents, skills, and abilities using our culture, history, and cultural aesthetics and racialized experiences. In other words, we can't live if we are poor. We have got to have a living wage. And Ubuntu helps us not only heal, but also to earn a living wage by way of an entrepreneurial project. The answer, Ubuntu's goal, the primary goal is to answer the question why we can't stick together. Ubuntu's objectives, to provide a safe space to learn how to stick together. 2, to provide a welcoming space to learn our history. In other words, learning our history, like critical race theory, you can't find in the public schools. It's not welcome. Number 3, to provide every Ubuntu participant the opportunity to use their talent, skill, abilities to build a village that addresses our needs from a culturally appropriate perspective. And 4, to provide every Ubuntu participant the opportunity to monetize their talents, skills, and abilities via entrepreneurial endeavors to earn a livable wage. And I keep saying talent, skills, and abilities because in this country, let me start from this perspective. From a counseling perspective, when I ask people what their talent, skills, and abilities are, they don't know. And that's because this system teaches us to focus on our weaknesses, what we can't do versus what we can do. So it's important that we come to know what our talent, skills, and abilities are, and that they are monetizable. We can make money with them, and Ubuntu will help us to do that. The objective for today is to provide a brief history of colonized thinking, who, when, where, why it originated. Number 2, to explain how, when, and why Black, Indigenous people of color globally were taught colonized thinking. Number 3, to verify that African royal scholars have said that we need to unite, to explain the health risk and thus the need for us all to join the Black healing space for good mental health. Number 5, to determine that only Ubuntu steps to unite, decolonizes thinking, and fosters unity. And that's because the 12-step program is the largest, most successful, quickest habit-changing program in the world, and it's free. Number 6, to explain that you too, a culturally specific Black healing space, can decolonize our thinking so that we can collectively eliminate poverty by using our talents, skills, and abilities to monetize features of our culture. Okay, historically, where did it come from? Historically, there became a need for a new way of thinking necessary for survival when Africans left Africa for Europe around from 40 to 100,000 years before the present. went out of Africa into Europe and got trapped there. They had to adapt to the environment to survive because they went from a climate of plentifulness to a climate that was food scarce. That created a culture change from a culture of humaneness to inhumaneness. Number three, it also created a phenotypical change, and something's missing there. And what was there, it was two heads, one black, one white, which means that the black person changed phenotypically, racially, and facially to white. In other words, we demelanated. That's where white people came from. Black people lost their melanin when they were trapped in this frigid, cold climate and became white. So did their thinking per the new culture. There it is. So there it is. You can see number one, when the blacks went to when Africans went to Europe, they experienced a drastic climate change from plentiful food to food scarcity. They experienced a cultural change, one from peacefulness to violence. In other words, if I have food, the climate doesn't allow for much production of food, planting of food, gathering food. Back then, it wasn't planting; it was killing food. It was vegetation, and in a cold climate, you don't have vegetation all year long like you did in Africa. So there was food scarcity, and if I had more food than you, then I was going to take your food, and you had to protect yours, and therefore violence and strength became um, valuable traits. And of course, because of the climate, we lost our melanin, and that's where white people came from. I see what's happened. Okay. While trapped there, a new way of thinking and behaving formed, and this new thinking and behavior is rooted in domination and control. The new thinking values became extreme individualism. What I have is mine. You cannot have any. I don't have enough food to share. You cannot come in. Physical strength. In Africa, strength isn't an issue when it comes to getting food. You can pick food off of a tree, off the ground. So even women who have less physical strength than men could have plenty of food. But in Europe, in that cold, frigid climate, physical strength became more valuable because it took a man to kill the beast and to protect the food. And again, if you came close to my dwelling, violence would occur because I'm not going to share my food. And these were traits that guaranteed the access of food. It was necessary to become this way in order to survive. And as a consequence, the isms developed. Classism, you have at the top people with the most food. In the middle, those who were hired to protect the food. That's the beginning of the police system. And at the bottom, the people who didn't have enough. They were the hungry ones, the poor ones. And men, sexism, men over women because men have more strength. This has evolved into the current class system. At the very top, you have the ultra rich white male patriarchal class. That's the 1%. Then you have the white upper class. Then you have the white middle class. Then you have, I just discovered many poor white classes. You can Google, there are many YouTube lectures now on hillbillies, white trash, scallywags, and crackers. Those are classes within the white class system, and under them, you have people of color and then Black people. They're developed eventually once these white people left Europe and came back into other parts of the world. racism. And at the top, you have the British, and then Eastern Europeans, and then Asians, Aborigines, and Africans at the bottom. So the isms developed during this period when people were trapped in Europe also. The purpose, what you see here are hierarchies. And the purpose of hierarchies is to maintain the system of white racism, white supremacy, as the American Psychiatric Association has admitted. It was in October 2021 that they admitted maintaining human hierarchies in the United States. The American Psychiatric Association apologized to people of color for APA's role in promoting, perpetuating, and failing to challenge racism, racial discrimination, and human hierarchies. So the purpose of the hierarchies is to maintain the system of racism, white supremacy. Whites' colonized thinking is perpetuated today by their institutions and their technology. Remember, the purpose is to maintain the system of racism, white supremacy. You have the hierarchies, classism, sexism, racism, and now they've added genderism. All of these hierarchies are also rooted in the concept of divide and conquer. If you divide people into enough smaller groups, then you can control them. Then that 1% can control the 99%, only as a consequence of divide and conquer strategies. And hierarchies is one of them. Whites' colonized thinking is learned in early childhood. Experiences like the lynching picnics. They took their kids to lynching picnics, and their kids learned from them that white people control anything and everybody. It's now perpetuated by police shootings. White kids see police shoot us, and nothing happens to them, which means that they have the power. It's learned in church. The biblical stories perpetuate the colonized thinking. In school, there's only their story can be told. The TV, the media paints us as criminals. And it teaches them through movies like, what is that? The Birth of a Nation, that we are to be feared. And therefore, when they ride through our parts of town, that last picture underneath there is somebody locking the car door. Lock your car door as we go into this part of town. And that equals inhumane behavior. That's why white people act the way they act. And I must say, epigenetically, there is a possibility that their behavior is permanent. Now, it can be changed again by way of the 12-step process, but it will take them much longer to change their behavior epigenetically than it will take us. And I'll explain that a bit later. Now, how are Black people toward colonized thinking? This initially the slave seasoning process, where we were taught divide and conquer strategies so that we would not unify. Then it's perpetuated in church with the white Jesus and the white stories, the biblical stories. It's continued in school. We don't learn our history in school, only European history and culture is taught in this society. And it's perpetuated on TV. Again, we're portrayed as prostitutes, drug dealers, and characters like Medea. America tells you that when immigrants come here, it takes 2 to 3 generations for them to become Americanized. Well, how many generations have we been here? That's how many generations we have been exposed to the Americanization process. And that equals inhumane behavior and colonized thinking. I thought there was something else I was going to say about that. But anyway, African scholars have told us that we need to unite. to counter this colonized thinking. And Martin has told us, Malcolm, Garvey, the Ethiopian proverb that you see there that says, when spiders unite, they can tie down a lion. When spiders unite, they can tie down a lion. Ali, a Swahili proverb, Black unity is key. Get organized, and you will compel the world to respect you. But I think Kwame Nkrumah said it best. And he said, it is clear that we must find an African solution to our problems. And that and that that and that this can only be found in African unity. Divided, we are weak. United, Africa can become the greatest force for all of the world. But why haven't we? When asked the question, our answer often, too often, is, well, we can't stick together. But why? Well, because we've been taught to distrust each other. The Willie Lynch letter may not have actually happened, but it is prophetic in that it taught us to distrust each other. It pitted the young against the old, light skin against dark skin, straight hair against curly hair, the suburbs against the ghetto, the Democrat against the Republican. Now, the homo against the heterosexual. And it's sort of pitted nationalists against Pan-Africanists against Afrocentrists versus, I don't know why I said Eurocentrists. But the point is that we have been taught centuries, 100 years, at least 400 years to distrust each other, which has created division, all types of division. And it really started before coming to the shores. It started with colonization in Africa when the Europeans sent missionaries into Africa. This distrust started. It was learned and therefore it can be unlearned. An example of colonized thinking is thinking that white ice is colder than black ice. It's having a white perspective, white history and cultural standards of beauty, individual value. How valuable am I? Not as valuable as a white person. It's that thinking, us learning that thinking and discarding the black perspective. Colonized thinking is us learning to think like white people think about us. And that replacing how we thought about ourselves in pre-colonial Africa. And how did we think about ourselves in pre-colonial Africa? Just look at the pyramids and the statues and you'll see what we thought about ourselves. Du Bois warned us of this. He said, if you only know European culture and history, you can only think and act white. Colonized thinking has health risk that they don't tell us about. The physical damage starts even before birth. Racism causes stress in the womb, which causes low birth rate babies and other conditions. I've wondered why so many dialysis clinics in the Black community today, where African Americans suffer high blood pressure, which causes kidney disease, but more high blood pressure, I think, today than prior to desegregation, because we talked about racism before desegregation, whereas now we don't. So we were able to vent and relieve much of the stress, whereas now we don't. So it harms us physically. It causes high blood pressure to the extent that it damages our kidneys kidneys, and there results in the need for dialysis. And there are stress charts that measure how much stress a person is experiencing. And if they experience more than 2 to 300 points, they can expect a traumatic illness within 2 to 3 years. However, the stress charts do not consider the stress of living while Black. They do not consider the stress from intergenerational trauma. And they do not consider the stress from post-traumatic slave disorder. So that means that we are functioning under inordinate stress, which accounts for our dying earlier than other ethnic groups. And the psychological damage and changes can be permanent. It's now known that they can be permanent. Colonized thinking, plus being Americanized, which is really called cultural genocide, plus intergenerational trauma equals epigenetic changes or changes in your DNA over a period of time. And this is so critical because I don't know how long it takes for it to happen, but we only have 1 to 2 generations left before the colonized thinking really started after desegregation. And I don't know how many generations we have. If Americanization occurs within 1 or 2 generations, well, then we can say that the epigenetic changes begin to evidence itself in 1 or 2 generations. And it has been at least 2 generations, I think, since desegregation. The remedy for all this, well, therapy can't help us because, and you'll read this with me, as of 2013, there is not a single profession in the US that requires its professionals to demonstrate an understanding of structural racism, nor has a profession or association established an official base of competencies to address race and racism. That means that psychiatrists, psychologists, social workers, counselors, clinicians are not trained at all to deal with how racism and the system of racism, white supremacy affects the health of Black people. They're not qualified. They're not taught to do it. I showed you a slide earlier where in 2021, the American Psychiatric Association apologized for being racist. Most of the professional health organizations have apologized, so they don't qualify to help us. So what are we going to do? Who's going to help us? White scholars aren't interested in dismantling the system of racism, white supremacy, nor are they interested in helping us to heal from the consequences of it, whether Freud or Maslow. And it's been proven that even if they were interested, they aren't capable. Culturally specific therapy could help. That's the type of therapy that we need, but it costs. And it will take longer than that 1 generation that we have left before the epigenetic changes set in. And I equate them to culture. We have seen our culture change since desegregation. We see it in our kids. I see it in my grandkids' generation. And the further we get away, so 1 more generation, I can see our kids not knowing African culture. which means to me that the epigenetic changes have begun to change our DNA. So even culturally specific therapy can help stop this permanent change, especially once people of my generation, the baby boomers, die out, because only my generation has a foot in pre-segregated Black culture and post-segregated Black culture. So I recommend the 12-step program. Why? Because it's a 90-day changing, habit changing process, and we need something that's going to work fast if we're going to catch and change this acculturation and this epigenetic DNA changes. We need something quick, and it's been proven that the 12-step process can begin to change behavior in 90 days, habits in 90 days. It's proven to work. It's free. And again, I can't say too often that it has proven to work within 90 days. It is the largest, most successful self-help program in the world. So why not model our program after such a program? And not just any Black copy of the white Alcoholics Anonymous model. Not because they are Black, other Black, or there are Black 12-step programs out there since George Floyd especially, but they're models or copies of the white AA 12-step program. And I have several up here. Perkins, I think I ran across Buford, Ron Buford. I say Perkins because Buford was and Perkins was my grandparents' name. But Buford has a 12-step program, both white and Black, and go to his 12-step program. But it's a copy of the white one, 12 steps towards political revelation. I don't think it gives steps, and they are different from the AA model. There's a workbook by Jerome Fox, but people need to meet, I think. And I must admit, I don't know exactly what the 7 steps to decolonize our mind or how it operates. I don't even think culturally specific 12-step programs are the answer. The Native Americans have one, and these are better than the others, though. The Afri-Live, these steps are found online, but I have not seen where they actually have a program. And then Dr. B has a program that's culturally specific. But I think only Ubuntu is the answer, because it's the only 12-step program designed to specifically decolonize our thinking in 90 days. It's the only program that provides a safe space to practice unifying behavior. And I really can't see that. And communal discussions, emotionless debates, and consensus building. It's designed to begin to decolonize faulty racialized thinking in 90 days, which equals a new habit. It takes 21 days to change a habit and 90 days to make it permanent. And that's by way of the 2190 habit rule. It's the only program that focuses on re-education and that offers Ubuntu graduates the opportunity to build a digital Sankofa village. 2, to monetize their talents, skills, and abilities. via entrepreneurial projects using their cultural aesthetics, history, proverbs, and racial experiences to make a living wage. For example, an example of using their racialized experiences, you can Google the bird watching while Black, the man who was bird watching in Central Park, and a white woman called the police on him. And I guess several weeks later, there's an article where he has started the bird watching business. So that's an example of an entrepreneurial project. Another one would be, I saw where a young lady who went to an independent Black school won the Google Doodle contest, and her artwork was all of what she learned at an independent Black school in terms of Black history. So to take what the proverbs and the history and put them into different formats, hip hop, theater projects, and digitally sell them are a few examples of how we can monetize aspects of our culture and learn the culture and the history at the same time. Ubuntu decolonizes thinking by reconnecting us with our African humane cultural values. Healing circles. It has a component to learn our history and culture. And then the Sankofa village, I'm speaking of us creating, gives us an opportunity to have a space to live, actually live our culture. It's about the matriarchal values replacing the patriarchal values. So decolonization is the exact opposite of colonization. It's replacing what we have now, the patriarchal values replaced with matriarchal values. The Ubuntu is a three-step process. Number one, it forms a new way of thinking. You have, again, healing circles. You to develop a network. 12 steps says develop a network. Get a sponsor. Work the steps. Meditate. Get in service and donate. Number two, we acquire new information. We learn what Ubuntu means, Sankofa, and Ma'at. We choose and once we learn what they are, which is African or matriarchal culture, you'll be able to choose which culture you want. I'm not dictating, though I wish I could, that we choose Africa's matriarchal culture. I'm saying learn what the culture is, learn what patriarchal culture is, and then choose. You can only choose once you know what they both are. And we have not been taught what they are. We have only been taught what patriarchal culture is. And number three, after being involved with Ubuntu for a year, you qualify to help build a global digital Sankofa village and to monetize your talent, skills, and abilities using aspects of our culture. Why a year? If we attempted to start building a Sankofa village today, because we have been taught to distrust each other, it would not be successful. It can be successful, however, once we have learned to decolonize our thinking and how to work harmoniously together for one purpose and one purpose only, and that is our survival and progress. And that's what I saw in the NA 12-step meetings That's what I have seen in 12-step, Black 12-step meetings in particular. People working together harmoniously with no leader for the sole purpose of getting better. Okay, what are the 12 steps to unite? I'm going to read them slowly. I wish normally I would have somebody in the audience to read each one, but I'll read them slowly and hopefully you'll read them with me. Number one, we often say we can't stick together without knowing. Let me find them. Because my screen is blocked and I can't see everything on it. That's why I'm
I can help you
looking.
out if you don't mind.
Okay, who is that?
It's Atlantis.
Atlantis, can you read them?
Sure. All right.
You
So
read
we'll,
one and I read, you read, we'll alternate like
okay,
we do in
cool.
the 12-step meeting.
Okay, excellent. So we'll start with number one. We often say we can't stick together without knowing that the slave making seasoning process, divide and conquer strategy, which taught us colonized thinking, continues to disable us from unifying and makes our lives unmanageable.
I still can't see everything. Read the next one while I find my a better
Sure.
copy.
All right. Step two, we came to understand that decolonizing our thinking will enable us to unite around issues common to all of us. Number three, we came to understand that we cannot decolonize our thinking alone, so we seek assistance from our higher power, our warrior scholars, our sponsor, and our Ubuntu community. Number four, we made an honest inventory of our thoughts, feelings, and behaviors, searching for examples of our colonized thinking. Number
Number,
five, mhm,
number five, admitted to our higher power, our sponsor, and Ubuntu community, the exact nature of our colonized thinking, like egoism or ego, envy, jealousy, extreme individualism, and extreme competitiveness. Number six, we became entirely ready to allow our higher power and sponsor assist us live our culture and learn our history so as to fully understand how colonized thinking impedes our ability to work harmoniously together. Number seven, we recognize that this is a lifelong and maybe difficult process, but we accept the challenge of learning to recognize and use for the good of the group everybody's talents, skills, and abilities. Number eight, made a list of all persons we have harmed as a consequence of colonized thinking and became willing to make amends. Number nine, made direct amends to all Black, Indigenous people of color whenever possible, except when to do so could cause them harm, could cause harm to them or others. Number 10, we continue. Did somebody say something? Number 10, we continue to take personal inventory, and when we are wrong, promptly admit it. I can't see that. So we can put aside our differences and practice the philosophies of the Golden Rule, Ubuntu, and Ma'at. Number 11, sort through meditation and study to improve our spiritual awareness and understanding of the significance and need for unity, which requires trust, interdependence, and collective cooperation. 12, having increased our level of understanding. As a result of applying these steps, we try to live the Ubuntu philosophy of humaneness, the Ma'at principles of righteous self-governance, and the Sankofa practice of allowing lessons of our past to instruct our future, and carry this message to others as we practice them in all our affairs. So where do we go from here? We join and start an Ubuntu Steps to Unite Healing Circle. You register your group with me, and there's the email address, and get a copy of the steps and literature package from me. Number two, persons not familiar with the 12-step process my screen is still blocked. People not familiar with the 12-step process, the screen is blocked, so I'm going to ad-lib. Persons not familiar with the 12-step process, and that means how to share, because we share with I statements, only I statements. I experienced this, I feel this, this happened to me, for example, and how to identify in. Often new people go to a 12-step meeting and they say, well, I don't use drugs, I don't have that problem. But they don't hear how people are handling their relationship issues. They don't hear how people are handling their health issues. They don't hear how people are handling their financial issues. And since we all have those issues, those are the issues that I'm recommending that we identify in, so as to feel a part of. But again, persons not familiar with the 12-step process, how to share and how to identify in, I'm recommending that they visit other types of 12-step programs and practice identifying in, relating to what you can: health, financial, relationship issues, not the drugs, alcohol, sex, or overspending. And I liked the 24/7 Narcotics Anonymous International Marathon meeting. I've given you the website to learn how a 12-step meeting operates. Number three, follow the process. Get a sponsor, call when the sponsor advises you to call, work the steps, develop a network, whom you call on a daily basis, meditate, get in service, and donate to help Ubuntu grow and develop. And I've given you a Cash App address. Number four, read the articles that I send in preparation for our study talk circles that will start 90 days after you have been a part of the Ubuntu process. And that's the education aspect of Ubuntu. We'll share articles, we all will read the same articles, and then come together to discuss the articles. It's like a study group, but the difference is, let's say there are 10 people in our group, and I give the 10 people 10, each of them 10 different articles. 10 times 10 is 100. Is that right? I think so. Anyway, that means the group will have the benefit all on the subject of education, how racism, white supremacy functions in the area of education. You have 10 articles, I have 10, and the other 8 people have 10 different articles. So the group has the benefit of 100 different articles on how racism, white supremacy function on education. That's different from reading one book, everybody reading a book. That's like a research paper. You're doing a research paper on how racism, white supremacy functions in the area of education, and you have 100 references. So we come together and I'll facilitate that group discussion, and out of that discussion will come a consensus, a group consensus on how racism, white supremacy functions in the area of education. And we would do that with all of Francis Welsing's 9 primary life areas. And if we did that monthly, that means in 9 months, a year for sure, we would have an understanding, we would have done what Francis told us to do, which is learn how racism, white supremacy functions in your 9 major life areas. So I'll be sending out articles and read them, and then we'll start the groups 90 days after. I'll say when. We'll get together and decide exactly when. And if there are 10 groups across the country, all with as many different articles as possible, you can just see the benefit of 10, 100, 10 groups times 100 times 100 articles each, or videos, chapters, pieces of information on education. We will, and then we have a Zoom meeting of all those 10 meetings. You can just imagine the wealth of information we will have on how racism, white supremacy functions in the area of education, entertainment, economics, labor law, politics, sex, and war. So I've added health, and I've changed sex to relationships, family, friends, marriage, and sex. And number 5, we're requesting experienced 12-step people with experience in the 12-step process to help coordinate or to help new groups learn the process. So again, how do we get started? Email me to join, to register your group. Visit other 12-step meetings to learn how the meeting process works. Follow the 12-step process. Read the articles that I send out. And persons, please volunteer to help coordinate these groups. And I want to thank you for attending and open the floor, Atlantis. We'll give the floor back to you.
All right. Thank you so much. That was a very informative lecture. I don't know if you had an opportunity to check out the chat, but there are a number of people in the audience, and you did have a slide where you highlighted some of the people who have inspired your work. So just kind of circling back to many of our scholars who've laid the foundation for much of the work that we do. So I do want to ask you, we have about 8 questions in the Q&A box so far. So this is a great opportunity for those who have not shared their question to please place it in the Q&A box. It'll make it much easier for us to get to your questions. And so as we're answering questions, receiving your questions, also feel free to put in the chat, share some love, and let us know how much you enjoyed tonight's presentation. Just to read a couple comments, folks are definitely thanking you for a good lecture. Marita, hey Marita. She says, ingenious presentation, Dr. Morgan, and perfect to inform our study groups. Thank you, Ms. Morgan. Your hard work will not be in vain. Yes, Rashida said it's very informative. Thank you for sharing. Looking forward to participating. So what you shared this evening is certainly resonating with members in our audience. So let's go ahead and get started with the questions that we do have so far. And again, if you have questions, please type them in the Q&A box. So question number 1, Adrian, she actually had 2 questions. I'm gonna combine them. But she asked if you are involved with and finding help with are you involved with and finding help from the Association for Black Psychologists? And just to clarify, how is the 12-step, maybe more specifically, how is the 12-step program aligned or distinguished from ABSI's work with the optimal worldview developed through optimal conceptual theory and the behavior systems analysis?
First, can you repeat the first part of the question?
Okay, so
First, let me self-disclose that I'm hard of hearing in both ears.
Okay, no problem. I'll try to speak a little bit louder. So, well, first question is, have you been involved with or sought any help from the Association for Black Psychologists?
Not directly. Maybe I have.
So,
I've reached out to Wade Nobles, um, uh, but I plan to, in order to make this work, the plan is to reach out to all organizations that are working for our benefit. It wouldn't make sense for me to try to start anything from scratch. So to create a Sankofa village, um, the independent schools have a part to play. The Black psychologists have a part to play, or Black practitioners have a part to play. Black what other types of groups? Protest groups. I mean, any group out there that has been working, I will contact them to ask them to become a part of this in some way, shape, or form.
okay. So
And
I think,
that's and that to me exemplifies is an example of me trying to unify, because we are all out here doing something, but we're not necessarily connected or united in our effort. And my effort will be to get us to connect and work in sync, in harmony, to be more effective, and produce a more profound quality result. And the
okay.
second part of the question was?
Yeah, so I think they were asking if you had connected with ABSI because they have shared information about something that's called the optimal worldview, developed through optimal conceptual theory, and then a bit behavioral systems analysis. So they're asking, so if you're familiar with any of those theories, they wanted to know if your STEP program is aligned or distinguished from those particular
I'm
ideas.
not aware of those theories. What I'm aware of them doing, they have a healing group. What is it called? Let me see if I can find what the group is called. But they have a healing group, which I have tried repeatedly to connect with and haven't been able to, except that the last time they were having a seminar, and it cost.
Is it the
Um,
Sawubona healing circles?
it was an emancipation circle, a global emancipation circle.
Okay.
Um,
All right. So I
Let me
think
see
so
if I
what,
can find it while
no,
you are talking.
okay.
But go ahead.
Yeah, so I think they were just obviously Adrian is familiar with ABSI and some of their work. So I think she also would like to suggest maybe
But
connect.
but the goal is to connect with them and every other organization, to offer them the opportunity to collaborate.
Mhm.
Period, because
Oh,
they do have a wealth of experience.
so
That's the goal. So the answer to the question is, I plan to do that.
okay, excellent. So Adrian, it sounds like you have some familiarity. So yes, connect with Miss Morgan, and I'm sure she'll be happy to help you out or receive your support. So the next question, And I know some of these questions kind of speak to something that you've already stated, so maybe you can elaborate or just clarify. Is your STEP program consistent with all African-centered principles, or is it a mix of other cultural elements?
It's totally Afrocentric, culturally specific.
Okay.
I don't know what else to say. It's called Ubuntu, I am because you are. It incorporates the principles of my aunt and the principles of Sankofa. Go back and get what you left behind to inform you for the future. I call myself making it Afrocentric.
Mm-hmm. Okay. So Ayoka asked if you can explain the permanent changes via epigenetics. You stated something about the coming generations won't know our history or culture, and this will lead to epigenetic changes.
But first, let me say, I think the name of the circles are emotional emancipation circles. I think that's created by these Black psychological associations. What was that question?
Yes. Can you explain the permanent changes via epigenetics?
I can't in detail. I just know that epigenetically, that's a relatively new science. And it says that anything that is practiced or done for a period of time can change aspects of the brain or one's DNA, which means that whatever we do repeatedly, habitually, for a long period of time, I don't know when, how long a period of time, the change can become permanent. Now, I said that to me, that says that white European behavior is permanent by way of epigenetic changes because they've been practicing it since, well, for thousands of years. But I also said that I thought it could be changed by way of the 12-step process because the 12-step process gives you a chance to practice a new behavior for a long period of time. I mean, for a period of time. So if practicing a behavior causes epigenetic changes, then practicing a new behavior can create a new behavior or replace the old behavior, extinguish the old behavior. For white people, the difference for them would be it would take them longer it would take more generations of people involved. If my generation, it would take more generations of them being involved in the 12-step process for changes to occur and become permanent than it would for Black and Indigenous people of color, because we have only been experiencing this behavior, well, African Americans since desegregation primarily. But it started with colonization, so she can do the math. If I started in the 1800s, let's say 1400s, let's use that date, 1492, and they started 40,000 years ago, that's how much longer they have been practicing colonized thinking than we have. And therefore, it would take them longer to extinguish the behavior.
So along those lines of taking them longer, but just the fact that we as African American people have experienced this programming for such a long period of time, and you kind of alluded to this, but someone is just, I guess, trying to wrap their mind around being able to change years of colonized thinking in 90 days. And so you did speak to,
I didn't say change it in 90 days. If I did, I was mistaken. What I should have said what the behavior begins to change. You change the habit in 21 days, and the change becomes permanent in 90. But you have to practice the behavior continuously, otherwise you relapse. Let me share an example with you. I took a 21-day mental diet from negative thinking once. And every time I had a negative thought, I had to start back at day 21, at day one. It took me a year to change that habit in order to not have any negative thoughts at all, just positive thoughts. And that lasted several years until life got really stressful for me. And that's when I relapsed and began to have negative thoughts again. And that's before I ran into 12 steps or had ever heard of 12 steps. And I can see that if I had the help of 12 steps, I would have been able to work through those difficult times and maintain my new way of thinking. But without the support, guidance of a group, of a 12-step group, any group that's interested in helping with habits, but 12 steps is the only one that I know of. But without the help of and support of a group, I relapsed, and it was very, very difficult for me to reacquire that habit of positive thinking. So the change begins in 90 days. That's what 12 steps says. Attend 90 meetings in 90 days, because that consistency of practicing a new behavior is what begins the change. And then staying involved with the 12-step group and process is what enables you to maintain it. Now, what will make it really permanent is for me to be involved in 12 steps, and my children to be involved, and my grandchildren and great-grandchildren. And each generation who's involved in the 12-step process will have less colonized thinking than the previous generation. And I can see, looking at my own family, my children have less colonized thinking than I do. The grandchildren, even less, in a way, because they have been impacted more by acculturation than me or my children. And my great-grandchildren, but if they involve themselves in the 12-step process, by the time my great-great-grandchildren get here, they will not have experienced all of this European indoctrination, and therefore they will not suffer from colonized thinking as we have. And it can, by the next generation for sure, be extinguished or eliminated. But it will take involvement and continuous participation. And that's possible. I think failure is not an option here. That I really do. Next question.
All right. Is there a minimum number of people that need to be considered to form a healing circle?
Repeat, please.
Is there a minimum number of people that is best for forming a healing circle, Ubuntu healing circle?
Yes, there is. 2.
A minimum of 2 people. And what about
Yeah.
a max? Is there a maximum number?
There is no max. On that 12-step, that internet 24-hour in a marathon 12-step meeting, there have been hundreds of participants from all over the world. No, there is no maximum. And then when they have not local, but regional and international meetings, thousands of people show up. I mean, absolutely thousands.
Okay. The next question, DK asked, do you think it would help to adopt Dr. Welsing's universal definition of racism and white supremacy?
I see no reason why not. Yes.
Okay.
I think it's, well, the answer to the question is yes.
Okay.
And if DK, if there was something that you wanted to clarify or add, feel free, add to your question, feel free to include that in the chat. And yes, you all will receive a recording. It will be posted. This recording of Wisdom Wednesday will be posted on the IKG YouTube channel within 48 hours. The next question, Baba Kojo, Clyde Michael Vane asked if there is a Ubuntu 12-step program that's already in existence.
I did my first presentation in November of last year, and from that presentation, a group started. None of the people in that group had any 12-step experience, and I stopped that group maybe last month because I could see that it really needed 12-step someone to help them with the process. I had another presentation in February. It was with a white group, but this group, the difference is still functioning. It has a 12-step group on Wednesdays, and it's different in that its members have years, 20 plus years of 12-step experience, and at least 20 plus years of anti-racism work, which means these are a group of white people who admit that they're racist and wanted to start a group because they were tired of just talking about the problem. They wanted to do something about the problem. And they thought to start with themselves was a good place to start. And they thought 12 steps was a great way to do that. So the answer to the question is, I've had two groups as a consequence of two presentations. My focus after this presentation will be to get my book written, and then, well, that would be my focus. Any group that forms really should be autonomous. That's why I'm asking for people with 12 steps experience to help the groups with the process, so that they can be functional.
Okay. So you kind of spoke to a portion of the next question. Sister Deborah asked, are you published with this program? You said that you're going to be working on a book. What about any workbooks for the 12-step program or physical
I
curriculum?
haven't published anything. That's my next project. And I'm thinking about a workbook. I'm thinking about what she asked about a workbook. I'm attempting to publish a book on why a 12-step program to unite. This is, and I'm speculating now. I don't know if a workbook is called for, but I think to incorporate the workbooks that are out there already, like the one that Michelle Alexander has, um, Jerome Fox has a workbook, and there are other workbooks. Even Tony Browder has questions and answers. But all of those things are resources that can be of assistance. And I don't want to reinvent the wheel, but I do want to explain why this process can help us to decolonize our thinking beginning within 90 days, and therefore to be able to unite in order to work harmoniously together.
Okay. The next question, this person is wondering if you have read Christopher Grandison's book, The Racial Hierarchy. And if you have, has that book informed any aspects of your analysis?
I have not. What is it again?
It's called The Racial Hierarchy, and the author is Christopher Grandison, Grandison.
Okay, I'll check it out.
All right. And Ajay, if you don't mind, if you could put that in the chat, just in case others might be interested in doing some more research. Thank you for sharing that. Ajay has another question. Would you be able to expand upon what you learned by observing Indigenous Native Americans, specifically how they learn to connect their drug addiction, specifically how they learn to connect their drug addictions, traumas, etc., to the colonial experience?
Well, reading some of their literature affirmed my conclusions that most of our problems come from being victims of this system of racism, white supremacy. As a counselor, I feel like only if you can eliminate the harm and damage the system of racism, white supremacy has done to us. Oh, once you eliminate the harm it has done to us, then whatever is left, I don't know, we look at, let me see if I can explain that differently. I think I'll try to explain it in this way. The only counseling competency that I have found that deals with racism, white supremacy, is in the multicultural counseling competencies. And it has a competency that says a counselor is supposed to be able to help a client determine if their problem is the result of racism, discrimination, or if it's due to their personal decision. And what I'm trying to say is, I really think almost every problem. Okay, number two, if we compare our behavior to the behavior of of Africans, classical Africans, and see the difference, you will see what problems we had then versus what problems we have now. Um, we didn't have a problem with low self-esteem then. I mean, we built the pyramids without the technology of today. We thought we could do that. How does a people think they can build a pyramid without the technology of today? They had an I can attitude. Whereas today, our attitude is, oh, I can't do this. Oh, you can't do that. And if you can't do it, you really can't envision anybody else doing it. Comparing the behavior of classical or Africans to our behavior today, the difference is the problems that we have are the result of the system of racism, white supremacy. And I don't know how else to describe it. But if I have high blood pressure and I take away living in a stressful environment, going to Africa, when I went to Africa, I felt so relaxed. And I didn't know why I felt so relaxed. You know, that means when I come back here, I'm feeling stressed because I'm living in a oppressive system. But only after going to a place that is not oppressive do I feel or don't have the pressure problem, which says the pressure problem is due to the stress of living in an oppressed system. It's not for whatever reasons, other reasons I was told. Does that sort of make sense? I hope so.
Yes, it definitely makes sense. And I think part of the challenge for some people may be trying to find balance as they maneuver out of this system and begin to change their way of thinking. So let's we have a few more questions. It's 8:31, so we still have about 15 minutes or so for a Q&A. So if there are any other questions, feel free to add them to the Q&A box. So the next question, um, it's an anonymous question, but they asked, how does one prevent a non-melanated participant from joining? What is the preferred response? And if I may, I want to give some context to the statement. I've participated in a healing circle, if you will, in which they gave a great analogy in terms of racism and the victim. And so it's difficult for a victim, let's say obviously a person of African ancestry, to heal from their experiences of racism and colonialism when the perpetrator or someone who symbolizes the perpetrator is in that same space. And so from that context of healing, um, I think maybe that's how to best frame this question. But again, the question is, how does one prevent a non-melanated participant from joining? Or do you feel that people of white, Black, Native American can all be a part of the same healing circle when it comes to colonized thinking?
I've recommended, I recommend, there's an Ubuntu group for exclusively for Black people. I've written steps for white people. I've written a set of steps for practitioners, for clergy, and for law enforcement. But to answer that question specifically, I believe that Black people cannot be honest in the presence of white people. They must and they need and require a safe Black space to heal. So the groups should not be mixed. I can see or envision at an annual conference the two groups coming together, but not in an Ubuntu group. No. Ubuntu was written specifically and exclusively to be a Black safe space to heal, a safe space for Black people to heal.
Okay, that was an excellent answer. Um, the next question, and I think this person is following up on a previous question about a workbook. So it sounds like Ayoka is suggesting that perhaps a workbook specific to the 12-step program structure would be helpful. And I maybe that's the original question that the person was asking when it comes to curriculum, a
I
workbook
can see that.
specifically, yeah, related to your program.
I can see that, but I would defer to, I asked for assistance at the beginning of this presentation, people who are willing to assist with whatever per their talent, skills, and abilities. And if there were a group of people with 12-step experience who are willing to help with that, I would be open. And I say that because I know my spot. I mean, there are people who are more experienced than I am, and therefore I would have to defer to them. But I think that's a good idea. And again, the operational issue is anyone, any 12-step people with 12-step experience willing to assist with that, I'm open to do that. I think that's a great idea.
All
It would
right.
help tremendously.
So we still have about 70 people, just a little over 70 people here still with us hanging until the end. So our dear sister is asking for support. So if this is something that you're interested in and willing to support in any way, make sure you capture her email address, which is on the screen, Ubuntu and the number 2 unite@gmail.com, and also check out her Facebook page. You can search or type in the URL that you see on the screen. Um, So we do have, all right, we got more questions coming in. Perfect. Uh, the next question asks if healing is possible for us while we exist or live in such a hostile anti-Black society.
Is that the question?
Yes.
Of course. That our state of health before desegregation was better than it is today. I showed a slide where the stress from racism, white supremacy starts in vitro. And I don't know if I said, but that was not the case before desegregation. And it's because people didn't get in join healing circles to talk about their racialized experiences, but they talked about them all the time. And therefore, that conversation relieved the stress. Once we got to the point of we desegregated and stopped talking about it, we began to maintain the stress, which causes health problems. So, in my lifetime, I experienced a generation, my grandparents' generation, who did not experience the stress that we experience today. And I would say, I don't remember people of my grandmother's era talking about hypertension. I remember them talking about arthritis. And I've decided that that arthritis was due to Lyme disease because they farmed, they lived, and they were exposed to ticks. They were rural people and exposed to ticks, which causes Lyme disease, which I had because I grew up in Brandywine, Maryland. And the condition was not diagnosed until I was in my 30s. Um, so I venture to say, and I asked the question recently, um, why so much kidney disease today? Again, because as opposed to in my grandparents' era and back and before, because of the stress of racism, white supremacy, um, causes hypertension, which damages the kidneys. So we need to put ourselves back. When I say restore our culture, I mean start to live before we to live how we lived before desegregation, and further the further back we go to I don't know how to say it. The people, the Gullah people is in South Carolina live the purest African culture in the country, the purest African culture because it was isolated from European culture to the extent that when the Smithsonian took them back to Sierra Leone, they were able to actually speak the language. This was 10 years ago. So what I'm saying is for us to learn to live our African culture is stress relieving. It's healthy, not healthier, healthy. Um, and that's what this program is designed to do, to reconnect us with that culture, to give us a space to talk about our experiences, to vent in so many words, to learn our history, and to experience the type of transformation Malcolm X experienced. He went from Detroit Red to Malcolm X as a consequence of learning his history. So to learn our history and then to actually create a village like Tulsa, Oklahoma. And is it what not Tulsa? What town was it that was burned? To and I understand that there's still Black townships around the country to create a global digital village, a space where we can always go and connect, vent, learn, be welcomed, feel comfortable, know your value. We can create that. it's easier today than it ever has been before because of social media. We just have to know what to do. And Ubuntu is designed just to share with us what to do. And once enough of us know what to do, I step back because then the group will decide how to do it.
Right. Thank you for that. So the last question, actually, let me just make one correction. Well, it's not necessarily a correction, but the title, excuse me, the author of the book that I shared with you earlier, or that someone in the audience shared, Racial Hierarchy. Sister Marita, just wanted to make sure you knew that you would find it under the author's name, C. Paul Grandison. So C is the first initial, Paul Grandison.
C is in cat?
Yes. C period Paul Grandison.
Okay. Thank you for sharing.
Yes, and thank you, Sister Marita, for that. All right. So I see we have one last question. We're winding down. If there are any other questions, feel free to type them in the Q&A chat. I think we can get to them with the time that we have left. Sister Helen asked, what about the notion that we have to eventually transcend this 3D world of different races, etc., and move into the consciousness of oneness?
Well, right now, my focus is us learning to work together. I don't think we can do anything, move towards anything until, not as a unit, until we learn to work together. So that's where I'm dedicating my energies. I'm 77 years old. And to be able to actualize, I want to say a good portion of this, because I do want to see it actualize, it materialize. Oneness. My focus is Black people learning to work together for their own good. And as Kwame Nkrumah said in his quote, and then what he's saying is that for us to be able to take care of ourselves well is an example, a model for any and everybody else. We're the oldest people on the face of the earth. If we're the first humans, we're the oldest people on the face of the earth. So for us to be able to function as we used to, we are a model for whomever else she's talking about. And they just need to follow us unless they have a better way of doing it. But that's the whole point of Sankofa, is to learn from the past what we need to be doing in the future. And as I said, my bottom line is that my focus is helping us to unite for our betterment, and the world will be a better place for it.
Right. I think that's an excellent way to wind down tonight's conversation. Thank you, Sister Jackie, for all of the information that you've shared this evening, and making it available to those who need it the most, which is all of us. So are there any closing words that you want to share before we wrap up this evening?
Are you talking to me?
Yes, ma'am. I was.
I told you I'm hard.
It's okay.
Please
No,
help me
no.
out.
It's
Repeat
okay.
your question.
It's okay. No, I was just asking if there are any final words that you want to share with our audience before we close out this evening.
I want to thank you for coming, for being participatory, and for supporting me. I would love for you to offer assistance wherever you can, and to think seriously about making this happen, to join a group, Um, I heard a man say that he thought he had decolonized his thinking. The point is that all of us need it. And those of us who have been working on decolonizing our thinking for years now need to join to help new people to become Jetna for new people. Um, we need those who understand the concept to share with those who don't understand it. Um, in the name of unity. So I look forward to working with everybody.
All right. And from the looks of it, you'll be having a number of people who are going to reach out to you. So the chat is blowing up. They are thanking you. They enjoyed the presentation. It was very enlightening. So thank you, thank you, thank you, Dr. Morgan, Miss Morgan.
Yes, I'm not a doctor.
So before we wind down, I do want to share a memo about an upcoming event. It is a special ancestral acknowledgement program where we're going to be honoring Dr. Frances Cress Welsing, Patricia Newton, and our brother Renoko Rashidi. And so this program is going to take place on Saturday, August 7th. And so stay tuned for more details. It will be at the Thurgood Marshall Center. This will be, I guess, officially our first program open to the public. So this is going to be exciting. So make sure you stay tuned for those details. And again, thank you everyone for all your love, your continued support. And we look forward to seeing you next month. So stay tuned and be safe and be blessed.